Hello everyone and welcome to the webinar How to Create a Global Brand from Scratch. My name is Daniel Berg and I'm the CEO of NextUp, and using my company as an example, I'm going to show you how we got started, developed and what we have planned for the future. We're also currently fundraising, so I'll talk briefly about that, and there'll also be the chance for any questions at the end, so feel free to type them in the questions box as we go along. If you're not familiar with Click Meeting, to get to the questions box on the right-hand side of your screen, which opens up the chat column on the right, feel free to type them in as we go along and I'll answer them at the end. Also, before we get started, a tiny bit of housekeeping. Just in case you get cut off or need to leave, this webinar will be available to watch on demand anytime at nextupcomedy.com/webinar. And for data privacy, I've hidden the attendee names, which only I can see. So to begin, the creation of any company, I think, starts with a solution to a problem. For NextUp, back in 2016, we spotted two problems. For stand-up comedy fans, if you can't make it to a gig in person due to timing, cost, availability, you have no way to watch on demand. It's worth noting that platforms like Netflix do have some stand-up comedy, but barely scratch the surface of what's out there. The second problem is for comedians. Their work, which they've spent a long time creating, is disappearing without any recorded trace, and they're only monetizing their live events. Our solution was simple: an on-demand video platform that filmed and showcased the most exciting comedians on the circuit, allowing comedy fans to catch up on the shows they otherwise would have missed and to discover new comedians, and for the comedians themselves to have their work preserved and showcased to a worldwide audience. When forming the business, we researched the digital media market and discovered that subscription video was starting to develop into specialist genres in the same way linear TV did in the 1980s, where mainstream broadcasters like BBC and CBS were flanked by specialist services. The same thing is now happening in the subscription video market, but at a much faster rate. There's Hayu for reality, Shudder for horror, and we're currently the only people doing it for live comedy. As you can see from this chart, even in 2016, subscriptions to specialist services were already outnumbering mainstream providers. So, put together our findings, developed a plan, and was selected by the Angel Investment Network to be presented to their pool of investors. Shortly after, we received some seed funding, and within 6 months from receiving investment, something we're incredibly proud of at NextUp, we had our product and launched, fulfilling all promises to our investors. We were available via mobile apps and web browsers and launched with 22 full-length comedy shows. It was our minimum viable product, and it was something we were really pleased with achieving. We knew we wanted to create a global brand, so it was essential that our rights were worldwide, and the service was available on as many devices as possible. The reaction from comedy fans, comedians, and the press was overwhelmingly positive, and we realized that we were onto something as we had a real-world validation for our business idea. At this point, we decided that it was not only important to grow the subscription service, but also the brand of NextUp, whilst keeping things as lean as possible. We kept an open dialogue with our members and only developed features they suggested, and this built our following and allowed our users to become more like members who were part of the club and played an active role in our development. We also didn't want comedians just to be our products. We wanted them to be our partners. So on top of the revenue share model, we decided to offer free rehearsal space, a comics fund, and invite them to company socials. This helped create brand ambassadors of both members and comedians, which eventually resulted in an industry low churn of just 7%. In 2017, we received follow-on funding from our initial investors, and we started to develop the business. We filmed some of the biggest names in comedy, growing the catalogue size to 100 shows, releasing one a week. We upgraded our tech platform, improving our user interface, and we also added a mood section, which allowed people to browse by tone of comedy. But most crucially, we made sure the NextUp brand was in as many places as possible through partnership and content deals, such as Comedians Edinburgh Flyers, Amazon Channels, Virgin Atlantic, and White & McKay Whiskey. We also expanded the service onto Fire TV, Amazon Channels, Apple TV, And today, we're really excited to announce that we've just launched on Roku boxes, which are branded Now TV in the UK. We've also started our first paid marketing sprints, which have yielded really great results. There's a few examples of the types of advert creatives they're trialing on the screen now. And they're driving towards certainties regarding our customer acquisition cost to tee us up for Series A investment next year. So what's next for us? We're now ready for more marketing to grow our subscriber base and to film the great comedy we know is out there. To make that happen, we're now in our third seed round of fundraising and are delighted to have investors in this round, including the former head of PwC's alternative investment arm and the former president of MGM Worldwide. I think it's a really exciting time for us, and I can't wait to grow our company over the next 12 months. That does bring me to the end of the presentation. To summarize, the key takeaways for us have been following. 1, to solve a key problem. 2, to create brand ambassadors. And 3, to be everywhere. And during all of those, keep things as lean as possible. Before we end, I do have time for questions. I can see there's quite a popular question come in regarding what about Netflix? That's something we hear quite a lot. I think what's absolutely key for us is that we're not a substitute for Netflix. We position ourselves as a bolt-on. It's something in the way the subscription video on demand market research told us that people probably subscribe to a big mainstream channel, but for people who want a little bit more of the genres they really care about, they're also happy to invest in them. We offer way more depth and breadth of content. There's a whole variety of comedy styles out there, some character, storytellers, sketch, which seen sell out Edinburgh and win awards, but currently are not reflected on services like Netflix or terrestrial TV. We also want to showcase both household names and the most exciting rising stars we find, whereas I think big mainstream platforms seem to focus just on the big accessible comedians. And I think, quite crucially, around 90% of our content is exclusive to us. So if you're a comedy fan, there's only one place you can go for quite a large amount of great comedy content. That brings me to the end. Thank you everyone for attending. My email is dan@nextupcomedy.com. Do feel free to drop me an email if you do think of any additional questions. And this webinar will be available after this on demand as well. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope to speak to you soon. Goodbye.